It was a crowded court that waited for the verdict by the panel of judges headed by presiding judge Tan Sri Lamin Haji Muhammad Yunus on the afternoon of November 25th, 2013. What followed was a lengthy rendition that was a landmark ruling. It was the first time that any court in the world had heard a case against the State of Israel and one of its generals. This entire case broke the tradition of immunity of nation-states from criminal prosecution under international law. The verdict also introduced a legal basis for international action to protect minorities from genocide by superior powers. The final judgment was indeed a narrative reaffirming the Genocide Convention. Even without the powers of enforcement, the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Tribunal delivered a verdict that reminded all that in the end, justice prevails.
The tribunal heard 11 witnesses and examined documentary evidence that clearly indicated a long catalogue of incredible crimes conceived as long as 1945 and continuing till the present. What is significant is that these are not isolated acts in the heat of the moment, but a repeated pattern of atrocities committed against the dispossessed inhabitants of Palestine. What is also significant is that the above culpable acts are systematically directed against the same group and by the same offender over the last 67 years. The scale of atrocities committed in their general nature indicate a clear genocidal intention. Now, Chamber 1 of the International Tribunal for former Yugoslavia stated the specific intent of the crime of genocide may be inferred from a number of factors, such as the general political doctrine, which gave rise to acts possibly covered by the definition of Article 4 or the interpretation of the destructive and discriminatory act. The tribunal accepts evidence from various international perspective social scientists, among them Professor Ian Pape, and John Hillier and Prof. Learn Komsky, that the ethnic cleansing of Palestine is a world historic tragedy that is the result of deliberate state policies of succeeding government of Israel since 1948. The tribunal wishes to state that tests that it employed in determining guilt was a test of beyond reasonable doubt. The tribunal heard significant evidence from the defense team, and that Israeli victim of bombing, killing, maiming, other military interventions, curfews, checkpoints, and appetite wars were in response to continuous Palestinian terrorism. The tribunal agrees that there is cogent evidence of Palestine resistance to Israel presence, incidences of suicide bombing, firing of crude rocket into Israel territory by Palestinian fighters. However, it is our finding that much of the Palestinian-generated violence is not an Israel's own territory. is not on Israel's own territory, but from and on Israel-occupied Palestinian land. Much of the violence perpetrated by Palestinians in a reaction by Palestinians is a reaction to the brutalities of the vicious racist brutalities and genocide that is a tragic feature of Palestinian life. Much as we condemn violence and pray for peace, it must be stated that no power on earth can douse the flame of freedom from the human spirit. As long as there is suppression, there will always be people prepared to die on their feet than to live on their knees. We also hold that the force employed by the IDF is excessive, totally disproportionate, and a violation of international humanitarian. The method used are unspeakably inhuman and amount to war crimes. We unanimously find the state of Israel guilty as charged. Verdict. After considering the evidence adduced by the prosecution and submissions by both the prosecution and defense team on behalf of the two defendants, the tribunal is satisfied beyond reasonable doubt that the first defendant, Amos Yaron, is guilty of crimes against humanity and genocide, and the second defendant, the state of Israel, is guilty of genocide. The tribunal orders that reparation commensurate with the irreparable harm and injury, pain and suffering undergone by complainant or crimes victims be paid to them, while it is constantly mindful of its stature as merely a tribunal of conscience with no real power of enforcement. This tribunal finds that the witnesses in this case are entitled to a justiciar through the payment of reparations by the two convicted parties. It is the tribunal's hope that armed with the findings of this tribunal, the witnesses, victim in this case, will in the near future find a state or an international judicial entity able and willing to exercise jurisdiction and to enforce the verdict of this tribunal against the two convicted parties. The tribunal's award of reparation shall be submitted to the War Crimes Commission to facilitate the determination and collection of reparation by the complainant war crime victims. International Criminal Court, United Nations Security Council. As a tribunal of conscience, the tribunal is fully aware that the verdict is merely declaratory in nature. We have no power of enforcement. What we can do under Article 34 of Chapter 8 of Part 2 of the Charter is to recommend to the Kuala Lumpur War Crime, which we hereby do, to submit this finding of conviction by the tribunal together with a record of this proceeding to the Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, as well as the United Nations and the Security Council. Next. Further, under Article 35 of the same chapter, this tribunal recommends to the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Commission that the names of the two convicted parties herein be entered and included in the Commission's register of war criminals and be published accordingly. The Tribunal recommends to the War Crimes Commission to give the widest international publicity to this conviction and grant our preparation, as these are the individual crimes. So, and these are universal crimes for which there is a responsibility upon nation to institute proceeding, a prosecution. The Tribunal deplores the failure of international institutions to punish the state of Israel for its crime and its total lack of respect of human law or international law and institutions of the United Nations. It urges the Commission to use all means to publicize this judgment, and in particular with respect to the Parliament and legislative assemblies of the major power, such as members of GH, and to urge these countries to intervene and put an end to the colonialist and racist policies of State of Israel and its supporters. Now, conclusion. Having delivered its verdict and consequential orders, this tribunal wishes to place on record its deep appreciation to both prosecution and defense team for their efforts in ensuring that this resumed hearing was able to be conducted in the best tradition of the law. The tribunal commends co-prosecutors, Professor Gurdia Singh Nijjar and Tansi Abdul Aziz Rahman and the other members of their team for their thorough preparation of their case. The tribunal also commends every single member of the defense team for accepting their typical assignment as friends of the court and for giving their all beyond their call of duty in the name of justice and fair play for their absent defendants, Mr. Jason K., Ms. Larissa Chuck, and Dr. Matthew Whitbroad, all of whom had addressed the tribunal during the hearing, meticulously presented the case for the defendants with extraordinary validity, even though none of them had met or had been instructed by the defendants. Finally, the tribunal extends its thanks to members of the Malaysian public and other benefactors who had generously contributed to the Kuala Lumpur Foundation to Tribunal's war in financing the holding of this agenda here. Thank you.
All right.
One can't sleep. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
Upload the cake, upload the cake.
Only 5 years old.
5.5 hours.
Only 5 years old.
Hey, cake.
Oh.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. They said happy birthday to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And my birthday is actually in 5.5 hours. And it's going to be the longest day of my life tomorrow because I leave tomorrow and I arrive just after midnight, although I take up 13 hours in the jet lag. But anyway, it's fun. And so anyway, and I really enjoyed working here. And I thought it was, and I know I learned a lot, and I enjoyed with my colleagues. We had a lot of good discussions, and they were very sociable in between at recesses.
Have you tasted durian?
No, I heard about it. I don't want that in my hotel room. It smells.
You're not allowed to leave. You're not allowed to leave. Have you tasted durian?